So I finally started Metaphor Refantazio, and this is my heartfelt and inspired experience with the first few hours of the game. So I'd say relatively, I'm pretty new to Atlas games, but anyone who knows me and knows me well knows that JRPGs specifically have shaped my life and a lot of my passions and creativity. But I'm not brand new to Atlas or Persona. In fact, back in 2022, I picked up Persona 4 Golden, and it was at a really weird part of my life. I was working this warehouse job. I would start my shift at like 3 a.m. So I would be waking up at like 7 p.m. and I'd eat some food and then I would stream. And I started streaming for the first time with Persona 4 Golden. But my passion for Persona and for Atlas games started, I'd say, many years before then. In early high school, I would write a lot. I would write a lot of short stories and cheesy poems. And I even started building my own huge world and characters, all of which I wanted to one day be this really cool, JRPG. Because that's, to me, that was the dream, right? And when I would write, I would listen to a lot of music. Most of the music I would listen to would be soundtracks and video game soundtracks. And one day I remember sitting in my room and writing, and all of a sudden YouTube recommended the soundtrack to Persona 3, and it just blew my mind and it changed my life. And ever since that moment, I just delved into a lot of research on the series and a lot of research into the lore and into the artists and the music and the gameplay, right? And so my passion has always been there, and it's always been a huge goal of mine to tackle these games. I always thought I would do it sooner. As a kid, I always thought like, hey, this is gonna be on my list next to tackle, right? And life just, kept happening, and things got in the way, and new games came out, and I got distracted, and it just never really happened. But as of this recording, I am finally at the end of Persona 5 Royal, and holy shit, what a game. It's taken me honestly a long time. It's taken, months and months of picking it up, grinding it out, playing a lot, putting it down, picking up another game. Persona 5 to me has just been a massive beast of a game, and it's so exciting to finally be at the end. And I've loved every second of it. Every second of it. I love the art, the music, the gameplay, the writing, it's all so stellar. And it's been so cool to finally be at the end of it. I remember when the game came out, and that would be on my list of games to play relatively soon, and unfortunately just didn't happen, but I'm so thankful I got to play it now. Recently, I've been feeling the strong itch to stream again, but this time from beginning to end, the whole game, which is hard because the games I love are usually JRPGs, which are really, really long games, right? 50 to 100 plus hours, depending on the game. But that's okay. I'm okay with committing to that. Picking the game was a little more of a challenge, but with the exciting assortment of Atlas games on the horizon, Persona 4 Revival, right? I just felt like this was kind of the perfect time to really hone in on this goal of mine to tackle Atlas's catalog, you know, all the way from Metaphor to Radiant Historia and Shin Megami Tensei, right? And so I thought Metaphor was the perfect start. And with a little bit of time, I've already dropped into Metaphor. The game has already stolen my heart. From the very opening and title screen of the game, I was already in love with the tone and the art direction. The amount of love and heart poured into every little element, every little UI detail is just, it's so inspiring to see the amount of heart poured into the craft, you know, and the cross of this highly stylized anime aesthetic with a dark fantasy setting and character art that takes you know, that classic anime style with the cel-shaded look and pushes it a bit further with almost a traditional painterly approach, utilizing multiple layers and brushstrokes to build up color and skin tone and texture and value. And it looks beautiful. When I ended that first stream, I was left with a lot of inspiration, and I was left with a strong desire to tackle the art, to try to understand the art a little bit better. I've been teaching myself art these past few years, since 2022 really, but I've wanted to draw and paint my whole life. And it's been a slow and steady growth with a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And recently I've been struggling a lot with replicating and understanding more stylized portraiture work. But with this hit of inspiration from this game, I'm like, I have to try again. I have to try it. So I sat down and decided to tackle Sojima's work in watercolor, because that's the medium I've chosen to take up, chosen to try to learn, as difficult as it is. And throughout this video, you're going to see my process of working on this piece. And I hope you all like it, because I'm actually really proud of how it turned out. Over the course of my streams so far with this game, I was feeling such a strong sense of familiarity that just kind of lingered. And for a minute there, I didn't quite know what it was pulling from until I started to make little connections. And it's not to Persona. It's actually pulling from a different video game franchise altogether. I know some of you might not understand that connection. For me, I think it was a lot of subconscious connections happening, right? It was pulling from something that was bringing a lot of comfort and familiarity, and I was just like, what is that? I feel like I've experienced this before, and it's not Persona, it's something else. And it was just pulling from those childhood memories, you know, late childhood memories, high school, middle school, I had with delving in and falling in love with the Fire Emblem series. And this game has made me realize how much I miss playing those games. The last one I played was Three Houses when that game launched, and it's been a long time, and I'm long overdue to tackle more of that series. You can point to many different elements between the games, starting with the social elements, right? Building your relationships with your comrades and party members throughout the game, which has been a core feature of Fire Emblem since the 90s. And then there's the thematic elements of Metaphor and Fire Emblem, dealing with the politics of the world. Stories revolved around the rise and fall of kingdoms and the horrors of war, and trying to fight for a country and deliver its people from corrupt rulers, right? These are all themes that are very familiar coming from, Fire Emblem. In regards to the storytelling, my favorite Fire Emblem game is probably Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia. And I just adored the story, and I adored the heartfelt opening you have with Alm and Celica. These two characters, these two kids who have this idea and this vision for what a perfect world would look like. And as they grow up and they find themselves in roles where they can start to enact change, they find conflictions with each other and each other's ideologies and how that should be carried out. And that's such a compelling element of that story. And then you have Metaphor, which opens very similarly with the main character and the prince, right? Both having this shared vision of what a perfect world would look like. And I love that idea. And I love starting with such a strong moral vision of what these characters want the world to look like. And I love it when stories take that and they make it a little more challenging. They show that, hey, this isn't easy to reach. This is going to take sacrifice. This is going to take a lot, and it's not going to be as easy to accomplish as you once thought. And there's going to be a lot of inner and internal conflictions you're going to have to face. And I really hope that Metaphor tackles this throughout the game. And because the setup of Metaphor is just so sick, wanting to free the prince from this curse. But there seems to be this growing burden being pushed onto the characters, at least from what I'm gathering so far, of their own responsibility to show the people that there's a better way. And there's more to uniting people and making a better world than just fear. But it's going to take work for these characters to show people that. And you're going to have to get involved with the community and get involved with people's lives and understand the different cultures present, the struggles people go through. And by doing all that in the game, it raises how people view you, right? Which will ultimately make that party a bigger contender for the throne. And of course, I have to talk about the music. There's a tone there that I was already familiar with, and the way the composer has been writing the music for this game just brings me back to those games. And I had to look it up, who the composer was, and it is the Persona composer. And that's not surprising with how many genres their music has already covered throughout Persona. They show that they can handle a large variety, and it makes sense that they're able to tackle something completely different with a medieval fantasy soundtrack. And it's unbelievable. I will be listening to this music the rest of my life on repeat as I paint and draw and pursue my creative hobbies, because it's so inspiring and it's so full and rich. I really want to talk about the combat. It takes a while before you get thrown into your first main encounter with teaching you the mechanics of the turn-based combat system, and it's sick. But one thing I wasn't expecting, silly as it might sound, was how Persona it really is. And that's kind of, I feel like, the theme moving forward with my thoughts of this game is like, oh shit, this game feels like it was built on the foundation and structure of a Persona game. With one thing that surprised me in combat was eventually, you know, when you can summon your archetype. And I was so surprised by that because I didn't even know you would have, you know, you could summon a persona, right? I had no idea. And that is by no means a criticism of the game. In fact, I think it's a strong suit of the game. They took this structure and foundation they've been building up for years and really, really pushed it. Because yes, you still have characters summoning in this game the archetypes, but they take it further with being able to switch your archetype for every character, and the archetypes being more of a class system. And that has just been such a cool element to explore. And I'm already addicted to the class system and the archetypes system in this game. I'm in the first main dungeon and I'm having so much fun switching the characters' classes and trying something new and having fun with new combinations. And it gets me really excited to see how changing classes early on and what you build will change the character's growth as you progress through the game. Metaphor feels like a grand experience, and it feels like every detail is so intimately crafted. I think an element of the game that lends to this feeling of grandiose is the world map, and that's the same for most JRPGs that I've played that have world maps, where they take this small video game world and make it feel so much bigger by stylization and exaggeration and how they express travel and convey traveling distance over time. When you go to the fortress, it's a day's trip. You have to stop and make camp. It's not something you can just run to. And I think conveying that element in games like this really sets a tone and really makes the game feel a lot bigger. I'm just a big fan of world maps and games and how it makes the world feel. So here is my finished painting, finished metaphor study, the main character, and I think it turned out really sick. I'm really happy with it, but it took many hours, not including, of course, the years of practice before, right? And the couple years of painting practice I've had. With this piece, I initially sat down, pulled out my watercolor paper, and I did a sketch. And I was really happy with that sketch at first. But when I came back, I noticed that the hand holding the blade wasn't proportioned. It was a little too small. So I was like, well, I can either paint this or I can do it again. So I sat down, got another sheet of watercolor paper out, and I drew it again. And this time it felt more proportionally accurate. However, I was a little too heavy-handed with my pencil and with my erase marks. What I did is I outlined everything in ink, and then I traced it onto my third and final piece of watercolor paper, which, you know, you could say watercolor paper is really expensive, and I wasted a lot of paper doing it. But what it taught me, I should be doing my drawings probably on regular drawing paper, and then just trace them over onto watercolor paper, which works for me because I don't really like drawing on watercolor paper regardless. But also the benefit of having a couple sketches already on watercolor is that I could take what I had and I could try. You know, I could be like, you know, I'm not too sure how this would look, what kind of blues I should use, what if I should go more yellow or a little bit more, you know, orange and red for the first layer, the skin tone. So I had a reference to paint over. I had a reference to try things on. And that gave me a lot of freedom and exploration to figure out how to capture this piece and how to capture the colors. And it's not perfect. There's a lot of mistakes and there's a lot of things I can do better and learn from. But overall, I am really happy with it. And I'm really happy that I challenged myself and pushed myself to sit down and stick with it. I am so excited to experience what this game and this world and story has to offer. And I'm excited on the journey it's going to take me. And if y'all are interested in joining along, I'll be streaming the entirety of this game on Twitch, and that's twitch.tv/sentient narrative. Paint Your Heart Back is going to be a series that I'll be releasing on YouTube, and it's going to be a mix of art and video games and the things I'm passionate about. Video games, to me, since I was a kid, have always inspired me and always fueled my creativity, but I never gave myself the chance to try. I never gave myself the chance, the time to learn how to use a pencil, to learn how to use a paintbrush. But I'm giving myself that chance now. And that's what Paint Your Heart Back is all about. That's what I want this series to be about. In a world that's all about chasing money and climbing corporate ladders and trying to get as many likes as possible with as short form content as possible, I want Paint Your Heart Back to resonate with people who realize, like, hey, slow down. It's okay. These things that are deemed important by other people aren't actually fulfilling and don't bring color to your life, don't bring knowledge, don't bring a better understanding of yourself and the world around you. And it's okay to slow down, and it's okay to give yourself the chance to learn something difficult and something that's going to take time and something that will ultimately mean something to you. And that's what art is to me, in the hopes that one day I can create something meaningful to the people and the world around me and tell the stories I want to tell. But in the meantime, I'm just so excited to be on this journey. And I'm so happy that I did push myself to start learning art and to start painting and to start drawing. And I'm so excited to meet more artists and a more like-minded people like myself who value these things in life. And if any of this resonates with you, I would love for you to join me on this journey. And with that said, thank you so much for checking out my first video of Paint Your Heart Back, and I hope you enjoyed. Treat yourselves well, and I'll talk to you later.